Everybody, how's it going? Welcome to what is Fabrizio inking. Let's get some background music. Yeah, hope everybody is having a nice Sunday afternoon. I am going to be working on the cover of Horace Hoover. So if you're new to me or the channel, I have a comic book, Horace Hoover. It's a 5-issue miniseries about an occult detective set in the 1920s, travels to pocket universes and encounters all sorts of monsters, esoteric mysteries. Check it out. Currently there is a coupon code, Hieronymus, which is Horace H. Hoover's middle name, to get a 15% off. So check that out if you are interested. So today I am doing the cover of issue 4. I already did a previous version of this cover, which I drew, I inked, and in the end, I didn't like it. So I redid it, and this is the alternate cover. What I will be doing, though, is I like to print out essentially a practice page on like cardstock. So this isn't like my nice Eon board inking Bristol board. This is just some cardstock you can find at like Office Max or something. So at minimum, I like to print out a version so I get the blue line right. So the blue line is, it's the pencil. It's the pencils converted into just blue. And then when I ink over it, I can pull out the blue and we just have the inks. So this is just kind of a warm-up, basically. And then I will jump to the final page. But since this is a cover, I really want to make sure I get this 100% nailed down. And so I'll pick a few areas. I'll try out some different techniques if my mic doesn't get in the way. And then when I go to do the finished version, I'll just have a little more information on how I'm going to handle it. I don't always do this, but like I said, for covers, you know, that's a big part of the comic. So it can't hurt to do a little bit of extra research on how you want to handle some of the inking. And I did have somebody actually ask for a tutorial, which maybe I'll actually do that now with this sort of throwaway version. So the question was, how do you know what direction to ink? And this actually, it's a little harder question than you would think. It seems obvious to some degree. Well, it's the direction of the form, but sometimes it's the direction of the light. And then it's kind of back and forth. So there isn't a sort of one answer for every scenario, but there's like a couple of answers for most scenarios. So I'll go through a few using this temp drawing. As far as, you know, how to hatch on an object, first thing is I always wait to do that. So I like to get essentially a bit of an outline structure down first before I jump into any values, just to make sure that the drawing was solid. So look at this hand, for example. Okay. So I do sort of an outline, you know, these are form lines, contour lines, to get the shape down. And then from here, you want to do some hatching. So let's say, for example, and this isn't the final thing, but say the light is coming from the top left. Now there's a few ways you can do that. You can essentially, if the light is going this direction, you can just hatch along that path, which would be like this. So that is in the direct, that's the direct angle of the light. And it can be right depending on what the angle of this plane is versus the actual angle of the light. So for example, what you really want to do is, even if the light's coming from this way, the angle of this plane, and by that I just mean that the top of the finger, is actually this direction. So that's what you want to use in this scenario. You want to take into account the direction of the light always, but you want to make sure it follows the actual form. Now, there are times where that's just not the case. So, let's say, for example, like if we go into his face a bit, under the nose is always a good example, because under the nose, you're never going to really follow the form. You're going to follow just the direction of the light. So if the light's coming up here, for example, and we have the nose, you really want to just follow the direction of the light. Because if you try to follow like the form on the horizontal, technically it's right in that you are creating the proper value. And if you were doing a traditional illustration, you can absolutely get away with, all sorts of different directions for hatching. But for comic books, it's very different. You're not really doing a traditional illustration. So you have to kind of pick and choose. And that wasn't a complete answer, but that was a bit of an answer. So I would say definitely take a look at the direction of the light, and then secondarily take a look at the direction of the actual plane. And you between those two is where you really want to look at. Because if they go against each other, it can flatten it out, because this shape now looks like it's goes here and then here, but that's not the real shape of that finger. So yeah, I don't know if that's a complete answer or not, but you also don't want to do this most of the time, but sometimes you do. If you wanted to add a value to the underside of a hand, and you want to make sure you are consistent with the actual form, that might entail doing a lot of really complex sort of curves, which again, if you're doing a traditional illustration, is totally acceptable, but for comic books, it's not the same thing. So I would stay away from that sort of that hatching that essentially will go in any direction. I would pick really just one or two directions and go from there. Even horizontal hatching is not always, it's rare that that's ever accurate, or will look right, I should say. It might be accurate. You just want to make sure you're always thinking about the actual form of the thing that you're inking. And as long as you're doing that, it'll help the reader figure out what's going on. And in the end, that is what it is all about. All right, so this sort of practice image, I usually don't do much more than this. It's really just to get the, you know, the ink in the pen going. Making sure that this is the right brush, because sometimes you might pick up a brush and it's on its last legs. You don't want to find out when you're putting down some really important strokes. Now this, for example, I would use the form because I really want to show it's round. It's really important that this has a shape to it. So in that scenario, yeah, it's going to be like a cross section of the form. I'll try to do a video where I come up with some rules that are a little better than that. But it's tricky because, like I said, there's not hard and fast rules that you can just apply to everything. You really have to take almost each section on its own to realize what would be better to describe a form at any given time. I feel like I started this off very technical, which isn't the best, but so this is Horace H. Hoover. We have Max on the right, and then we have Slurp in the background. I really wanted to make sure I had all of the characters on the cover. This is sort of the resolution of the Smoke Man story. So it's kind of a big deal. I've been leading up to this for 3 issues at this point. So I wanted to make sure the whole gang was associated. And they play a very integral part to that resolution. So here's another example. So we have Horace H. Hoover's fingers, and I'm going to follow the form of the plane itself. It really shows where the light is when you do that. And if I had like done cross sections for that, again, technically it's right. If you're adding a value, you know, whether or not that's horizontal or vertical, technically it's right, but comic books they're their own thing, so doesn't mean you can't, but if you do that type of hatching, you're going to need to do it across the whole thing. Okay. All right, I think we're good on this. So I'm going to switch to the actual finished. As far as where I like to start, it depends on the image. You know, for this, I think I will start with these wings. Really organic, fun things to draw, where I can really lean into the brush, you know, thick, then thin, then thick. I don't want to get too noodly, especially at the beginning, so. But I want to make sure I describe enough of this. So I just finished up the Transformers first 6 issues. The new Skybound Image Transformers. And it was pretty fun. I'm not sure what I was expecting. It's definitely a little different than I was expecting, though. I guess in my head, everything is still the 80s. So when I jump into something, especially that is a property of the 80s, there are certain things I'm expecting. So it was definitely different. The art was very loose. And I guess for Transformers, I didn't see how that was possible, you know. You have all these geometric shapes. So the fact that the artist Daryl, can't remember his name. I don't think he uses a ruler the entire 6 issues. That's pretty bold, I'll say. It works for the most part. I think the art it's pretty intense. It's I don't like the word cartoony, but it's definitely exaggerated in some places. A lot of forced perspective. A lot of extreme perspective. I'll definitely pick up the other ones just to see where it goes, though. I know everybody has been raving about it, so if everybody's raving about it, I'll check it out. Let's see. Yeah, after I finished that up, I started reading Batman and Dylan Dog, which, so I'm a huge Dylan Dog fan. I love Dylan Dog. I read a collected book years and years ago. I love it, though. It's just the right mix of sort of supernatural, occult stuff. Love the art in this book, though. Batman meets Dylan Dog and Dylan Dog. I can't remember the exact title, but the art's incredible. It's some of the best art I've seen in years, especially coming out of a mainstream book. So just started it, but so far really liking it. I'll definitely check it out just for the art. Colors are great. So this demon has like ropes, chains all over him, tying up his wings, which can get a little tedious, but really adds to the effect. I'm definitely gonna take my time with this. So normally I would try to talk a bit more, but with this being a cover, I really want to make sure it's as good as possible. Logan Andrews. Hello all, late as usual. Hey, how's it going? I actually started pretty late. I grabbed a midday breakfast, early lunch, and then I had to print this out, and unfortunately I have a Mac, and the only way to print this out so you get true cyan is from a PC. I have yet to figure out a way to really get pure cyan from a Mac on the printing side if you're using an Epson. So I had to boot into my PC just to print this out. This brush has been pretty great. Normally, you know, I can retire a brush every so often, but this one's really been keeping its point for quite some time. I'll just keep waiting for it to split. I don't know if there's anything more fun to draw or ink than like bat wings. Especially after I spent, I don't know how long, drawing a car. Very accurately drawing a car upside down. It's nice to just have an organic thing to draw. It's just more about shape and combination of values. Currently on page 17 of issue 4. It's definitely taken a lot longer than the other issues. but there's a demonstrable quality increase as each issue progresses. So as difficult it is to like see the calendar kind of fly by, whenever you see the increase in quality, I feel like it's worth it as a consumer. If somebody wants, if Brian Boland can only do one, and I'm not comparing myself to Brian Boland. If Brian Boland can only do one book a year or a year and a half, I would rather he take that time. Some people have really quick styles. Speaking of that Transformers, it really seems like that's a very quick style, and you could crank out pages quickly. There's, like I said, no straight edges, so there's no rulers, there's no perspective. It's all very much just get the energy and the motion on the page and then move on. The only thing that was interesting about it, I don't know if anybody knows this, the amount of panels and detail on the page, I would think that he's not doing 2 up, but he's doing 4 up, like giant sheets of paper. That's just a guess. He might even work digitally, I don't know. But it just really seemed like you could only achieve that kind of detail if you're doing 4 up. I could be wrong. Probably wrong. But that's what it looks like. Sometimes those old comic books, your jaw drops when you see the beautiful line work and all the stuff that they're able to get into one comic strip or one comic page, and then you realize they were working on huge sheets of paper, and that's just easier. I'm also making a conscious effort not to put too much hatching or grays in this cover in particular. I really want to try to make it quite a bit more stark than some of the other covers I've done. So that's one of those things where it's a little bit of an experiment, but you've got to play around with that stuff to see what works. And I just noticed in a lot of my favorite covers, there is a starkness to the blacks and the whites. So that's what I'm going to try to work on. You just got to pick that one thing to improve on, try a few things and see what works. I said that September 1st is officially Halloween. I used to very much be in the camp of, until it's that holiday, it's not that holiday, just starting things 4 months early, putting up Christmas decorations, I used to get angry at that. I've officially completely succumbed, because if you don't celebrate early, you'll find that you never celebrate some holidays because they just get overwritten by other ones. So as of September 1st, I don't care if it's 110 degrees outside. In my house, it's going to officially be Halloween. So I will be listening to Halloween music. I don't know what Halloween music is. I'll be watching Halloween and fall-themed movies and TV shows, and because I wait all year for it. I think anybody that is a fan of Slurp will really enjoy a couple of scenes in issue 4. Yeah, as someone who has to deal with very specific geometric drawings, I can't imagine sort of off the cuff, doing something like the Transformers without rulers. And now I do freehand everything as far as Horace's helmet, but it's a refining process that takes actually quite some time, because I have to draw his head in so many different shapes, slightly angled, that I can't use a ruler or anything like that. But it's very difficult just to freehand it and have it really accurate and clean. So I can't imagine having every single character in a comic book need that sort of care. I just have Horace's head, and that's substantial. I am currently coloring a few Horace H. Hoover drawings that I had done, I think almost, well, maybe not a year ago, 5-6 months ago. Then I'm finally getting around to coloring. They're like pinups. And they're also always good at foreshadowing things that'll be in other stories. So those are fun. Should have those done this week. Logan, if you look at the original series from Marvel back in the 80s, you can see the difference in lines on the page. Some were with a brush, and others you can tell it was with a ruler. It's funny you mention that, because I think at the time I probably only read like 1 or 2 Transformers Marvel issues, and I just bought a few past, I don't know, month or so, and I haven't had a chance to look at them. But I did want to pull them out just to see the difference. It did make me wonder, or just kind of think about, the amount of pages that you can do as an artist. Sometimes quantity is better than quality. I'm not saying that he's not producing quality. I just mean in general. So you have people that have a very fast style that basically can create tons of work. And then you have people that really labor over stuff, like a Brian Bolland or a David Mazzucchelli or somebody like that only produced a little bit of work. And not a little bit, I shouldn't say less work, right? Than somebody that has a really organic style that can create tons of pages, lots of titles, It's different, and I wonder what that means in terms of having a career, being able to touch 10 different titles as opposed to 2. 2 that are done extraordinarily well as these beautiful pieces of art, or is it better to touch 20, put your imprint on those 20, being associated with those 20? I don't know. I wonder about that. I think given the opportunity, obviously if you're doing it for a career, you have to produce so many pages a month. So I understand that, but all things being equal, what would be better? Just to do a couple of like beautiful, really amazingly drawn books, or 10 that are really good, but they won't necessarily be looked at and studied as, great works of art. I was listening to an interview with Brian Bolland a while back, and he really made it sound like he knew that what he was doing for Killing Joke would be, the best work that he's ever done, which I thought was pretty fascinating. Usually people look back on their careers and they realize, this particular run or this book ended up being the most important thing I ever did. But he said that he knew at that time, which is, one of the reasons he probably took the care that he did with it. Logan, probably it depends on your level that your name carries, like Jim Lee, for example. Yeah, for sure. So one of my other favorite artists currently working is Sanford Green, who did Bitter Root. He did other stuff too, but for me, Bitter Root was really a beautifully drawn and inked book. And it also looks, and I could be wrong, but it looks like a fast style. A very confident, fast style. I always liked like covers that really show the characters in dire straits. It's like you want to open up the book and start reading to get them out of that situation. Or figure out how they got themselves into that situation too. Even though I am sort of taking my time with this one, still making decent progress. This cover doesn't have any buildings in the background or anything like that I would need a ruler for. So this is all just sort of organic, which makes it a lot easier. Especially when you're dealing with things I've drawn hundreds and hundreds of times now. I've done Horace, Slurp, and Max over and over and over again. And now we have a new character, but even he's not new. So these are things that I've definitely drawn and have a bit of a shorthand for, or at least understand the form enough to draw and ink pretty easily. So I got about 15 minutes left. Debris is interesting to me. It's the one thing that you have to at once be random about and very much still have form and has to follow all of the regular rules that everything else would. So perspective and shadow and scale and all that. Some people are very good at just doing debris. As ludicrous as that sounds, it's just one of those things where you can really be good at it for some strange reason. And you can imply a lot more debris and detail than is actually there. I think that's the skill, ultimately. few more minutes and I'll probably call it a day. Alrighty, I think I'm good. Gotta get back to drawing. Page 14, 17. And then I have like the next 8 pages actually thumbnailed out for sort of an action scene conclusion, which is going to be pretty interesting. You'll see Slurp, Max, and Horace fighting. Pretty intense battle. The Gravy Sandwich Cat. Thanks for sharing, love it. Thank you. I appreciate you popping in, checking it out. It was a pretty productive day. This will probably take me 3 hours, maybe 4 hours to finish it. So I'll be doing this for the next several Sundays for sure. Again, if you want a 15% discount, go to HoraceHoover.com and use the coupon code Hieronymus. And there's the digital books, the print books, and Horace Hoover resin model figure. Check them out if you're interested. I will be back on next Sunday, probably 3 o'clock. Thanks again, everybody. I appreciate it. And have a good Sunday. Bye.